meeting to order. We'll do the roll call. Chair Kristen Vara-Garcia is absent. Michael Kreidel, which is me, is present. Peter Cruz.
Here.
Michael Kugler.
Here.
Rodney Romano.
Here.
And we have Al.
Johnson sitting in for Dave Ehrenberg.
Okay, and we are missing the public defender. Thank you. There are minutes distributed from the last meeting of May 2, 2024. Are there any comments, questions, or is there a motion to accept them as presented?
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. The minutes are accepted as passed. We will now shift into the 6-month status report that will be presented by our Inspector General, John Carey.
Well, good afternoon to all the IG committee members. Thank you for coming, and I wish you all happy holidays here. And so we'll get into our presentation for our activities over the last 6 months. And I just like to start out with our mission, not just for you, but for all our folks watching out there. But the mission is to promote integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness in government in order to enhance our public trust. And we do that, we provide independent and objective insight, oversight, and foresight through our audits, investigations, our contract activities, reviews, and our outreach activities. And I'd like to always put that in another perspective, in plain people speak, 2 sides of the coin. Basically what we do. On one side of the coin, we try to prevent, detect, investigate fraud, waste, and abuse. Basically, we root out the bad. And then on the other side of the coin is that positive side, as we try to promote integrity, efficiency, effectiveness, economy, and government, as we promote the good. And that's ultimately what we're here for, is to make government better. Here's a roadmap for today of where we're going to be going. And just first of all, some staff highlights along the way. Chanel Braithwaite, she became a certified IDEA data analyst during this 6-month period, which is like she is a data analyst, and now I've seen the t-shirts. I don't think Chanel is here, but I've seen the t-shirts that say data analyst, just accept what I say is right. She is an expert in data analytics. Yes, sir.
Inspector General, do you want to clarify that IDEA is an application?
Yes.
As opposed to a
It's
concept?
just not a concept of, not just a good idea. Yeah, yes, it is an application. IDEA is an application on a data analytics application, a specific tool that data analysts have. And so she became certified, which is a big deal. And so that's another tool that we have in our office, that we use IDEA, that we've used that routinely. And she's been our person that we've sent to school, and a number of our folks know how to use this within our office. But now she's become particularly certified in this area, that really adds to not only her knowledge, but her credibility and our credibility as an office in that. So thank you for that. It's more than an idea. It's a tool to do analytics. Hank Nagel, who's not here, he became a certified information system auditor. And that's the second. Hillary Bojan, our director of audits, already is certified. We've all had training in auditing information systems, but they've received now certifications in that, which again is another good tool that we have as we're out and about looking at the municipalities and the county to make sure that we're trying to help them guard our citizens and information to help us do better in guarding our information and make sure we have the proper internal controls in place. Calinthia Dillard, Deputy IG and General Counsel, she's actually taken now the place of President of the Forum Club, which again, she's already had a couple speaking engagements since she's taken over, doing really good. And as the president of the Forum Club, she was also recognized during this 6-month period by the Women Empowering Women in Development organization during this time. She's given special recognition during this period. Now, I want to also note, Calinthia, just since the last 6-month period ended, she was elected to the board of directors of the National Association of Inspectors General. So she is now on the board along with me on our national association. And she also spoke at our nationwide IG training conference. We have every year training for IGs across the United States. In fact, international Inspector General representatives come to that, and she was on a panel of legal experts during last month in New Orleans at the conference. Now, and two, before I move on, I just want to mention and give credit to Jeff Whaley down here. You all received electronically a copy of our annual report. Jeff is just not only critical in so many things we do from an IT perspective, but he is one of our folks in internal controls who look over our reports. He's one of the last folks who looks over the reports and our documents that go out, puts together our briefings. He's key in putting together our annual report every year. This is a draft of the hard copy we've just received back from the printers, and so the hard copies will be, we make limited editions of hard copies also going out. So it's a great report, and Jeff was a key player in that. So thank you, Jeff. Okay, now here we're going to continue on now into the operational aspect of what we've done over the last 6 months. And here's where we're going to go, and I'm going to turn it over now to Stu Robinson, the Director of Investigations, is going to brief on our intake and investigation activities. So Stu.
Thank you, John. Surprise. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to let you know what the Investigations and Intake Division at the OIG has accomplished in the last 6 months. And we will go a little past that 6-month period to talk about the investigation of Riviera Beach water that was published just after the 6-month. First, let's review our intake activities. They are fairly consistent for the past 6 months. Of note, we're getting fewer post-COVID assistance fraud matters coming in. So the intake activities that are coming in now tend to be more involved, more multi-investigator projects. But we still have some of the larger assistance matters still in play. Our activities over the 6 months, you'll see that law enforcement referrals are down numerically because there's less fraud assistance reports out there. The production of reports and fraud assistance reports continues on, and law enforcement is still interested in those. Now let's get to our investigations. I'm going to talk about 6 investigations. 5 of them were completed and were published in the past 6 months. 4 of those are fraud assistance reports. One of them is about some senior county employees, and then the last one we'll talk about is Riviera Beach water. So The first one was a fraud assistance report. Chelsea Martin was the lead investigator on that. It was a healthcare industry employee that turned in loss of employment documentation to the county during the COVID era, got all kinds of rental assistance, regular rental assistance, over $19,000 worth, and the loss of employment was fraudulent documents. They never lost employment. So referred to law enforcement, as was the next one, another person in a healthcare office. And again, false documents showing loss of employment. You needed to show that you lost employment because of COVID era restrictions. And they falsified letters, photoshopped up loss of employment letters, pay stubs that showed that income was down for this applicant, and it turned into multiple fraudulent applications to the tune of just over $11,000. Lizette McGowan, with help from Chris Dykman, were the lead investigators on that one. The next one, we name the subject, and often in these fraud reports, law enforcement sees the named subject, the county sees the named subject, but the public doesn't because of legal restrictions about assistance applicants. So we redact the names from the public documents. In this one, this Antonio Silva, who was an Orlando resident, as far as we know, never lived in Palm Beach County, submitted applications with himself as the landlord for what was purportedly a Palm Beach County resident. The Palm Beach County resident had no knowledge that the applications were being submitted. Mr. Silva attempted to submit multiple additional applications once he got about $5,300 from the county, trying to get about $29,000 more from the county. Those were denied by the county. When we put the project together, we saw Mr. Silva, the Orlando resident's bank statements, and saw that he was also applying in multiple government agencies for assistance across the country, in Texas, in New York State, in Montana. And we reached out to all of those other jurisdictions and found that in Orlando, and a couple of them took on the fraud investigations of him, and then Orlando, the state attorney's office, called us back and said, we just arrested him on large-scale white-collar fraud, bank fraud, unrelated to our cases and the government assistance cases. So we're coordinating with them. He's already been arrested. He's being held without bond in Orlando, and they are using our information as additional bad acts towards sentencing or towards negotiations with his attorney. So we're very cognizant when we work these fraud cases of trying to do our due diligence to make sure that we're not, that we're capturing all of the Palm Beach County fraud, but also that we're capturing the fraud out of Palm Beach County. Also worth noting, because these cases, some of them the fraud happened a year, 2 years, or more ago. We still think they're important for a couple of reasons. One is law enforcement resources can be limited at times. When we put these cases together, these final reports together, we do very detailed work and we refer them to law enforcement. So law enforcement with a 5-year statute of limitations often can take our work and work with it. The county takes our final reports and can and has banned these subjects from future county applications. And we still get media coverage of these reports. And when the media coverage goes out, it sends a message in the community, hopefully at times, to people that are considering these reports, this kind of activity, and letting them know that somebody's watching. Additionally, the county continues to get reimbursement from subjects of these reports, actively happening. Some people are on monthly payment plans to repay the county. The last fraud report we'll talk about, Kendra Lester again was the lead investigator. An individual that received over $15,000 of assistance based on fraudulent applications. During the investigation, the subject of the case told us all about her friend that helped her put the applications together and create the false documents, and that has turned into a separate investigation of additional applications by this friend that helped her put the application together. We have other false applications identified by that friend. Once again, law enforcement notified. The next investigation that I'd like to talk about is about 2 senior county officials in the Planning, Zoning, Building Department, the former deputy building official and a planning, zoning, and building manager. In the post-COVID era, the county approved, because of the glut of building applications in the county approved overtime for employees in planning, zoning, building. The deputy building official routinely charged the county for overtime during his lunch hour, even though it was a hard and fast county rule that you were not allowed to claim overtime for your lunch hour. He also claimed overtime for hours that were before his swipe card showed him entering his office building regularly on a routine basis, usually between 6 and 8 a.m. And it was an in-office required job. So the deputy building official, they kind of found out it was happening, and planning, zoning, and building did the right thing, sent an email to all employees saying, stop claiming overtime for lunch. At that point, he started only claiming the 6 to 8 a.m. and at times approved his own overtime requests to the tune of about $6,000. There was about $21,000 plus of overtime for this 6 to 8 a.m. that we questioned instead of identified, because we see the first swipe card into the building those days, but we can't prove that he wasn't working in the parking lot or piggybacking into the building with someone. But the about $6,000 was an identified fraud cost. This employee is no longer working for the county. Both employees involved in this are no longer working for the county, and the almost $6,000 has been returned to the taxpayers. Yes, sir.
When you say they're no longer working for the county, did this lead to their termination, or were they granted some sort of a graceful exit?
I wouldn't want to characterize how graceful the exit was, but the investigation, I think it's safe to say, was the direct lead to their resignation.
In other words, would their employment files say that they were fired for committing fraud?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Okay. And then a significant media coverage and public impact report published after the reporting period, published in November. Riviera Beach water issues. The lead investigators who did an extraordinary job, one of our new investigators, Leo Briones, who came over from IRS Criminal, partnered with one of our experienced investigators, Cynthia Suriel, who are both here this afternoon, and assisted by Ticia Morris, our intake specialist, who did a lot of the administrative things to keep them going. They did a whole lot of work in the most compressed time we could do it, because the public needed to know, but we needed to be fact specific. So the Department of Health saw that Riviera Beach had a fecal matter positive well that was not reported to the public within 24 hours for a boil water notice, and was not reported to them within 24 hours per the requirements. The Department of Health looks at water quality. They don't look at who is responsible. The investigation was referred to us to find out who was responsible for that one time that fecal contamination was not reported. Our investigators did, in my opinion, a truly outstanding job of looking for the entirety of possible problems, not just that one instance that we started with. And they didn't just get the records of water quality that were referred by Riviera Beach to the Department of Health. They went a step farther. They got the records that the Department of Health didn't have. which was the original lab testing results that were sent back to Riviera Beach. Riviera Beach then sent them on to the Department of Health. And they found some striking problems. They found that on over 130 occasions, water contamination positive results were either not provided by Riviera Beach to the Department of Health, or on a few occasions altered. And because of not just lazy or sloppy, but because of those actions, wells that should have never been opened on multiple occasions were left open for public consumption, even though the city employees knew that these wells had tested contaminated. Let me give you an example. I don't know if you can see it on, the screen may be a little small to see, but on the right side of the screen, you see what the city submitted for well 862 to the Department of Health. And you'll see in the red circle, they submitted an A absent for fecal and an A absent for total coliform. But that's not what the lab sent them. The lab sent Riviera Beach, and you see on the left side, it's the exact same form, the same signature block, the same signatures, the same well, the same time, the same day. So on the left side, you'll see that there is a P for present. On a couple of occasions, Riviera Beach city employees actually went to the extent to physically alter positive lab reports from presence of contamination to absence of contamination, then submitted the altered lab reports to the Department of Health, followed that submission up with an email saying, essentially, see, we passed. Do we have permission to put this well back into service? That's the kind of evidence that our investigators put together, and we held 4 now former employees as a result of our investigation, directly responsible. We also, the media coverage isn't just to talk about what those people did. It's also prominent in the eyes of every water department, every public employee, every city manager in the county, so they see the necessity of these essential public services, not just going through a process, but actually monitoring the process, training for effective execution of these processes so that this kind of thing never happens again.
So was that the one of the people in Riviera that ended up going to Delray Beach?
He resigned as a Delray Beach compliance manager November 20th. Delray Beach got a copy of our final report and read about the actions of their employee at that time. Our investigations are confidential and exempt until they become public, and we let Delray Beach know about the public report once it was out. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Stu.
Okay, I want to emphasize, I mean, this was really good. Stu and Leo, Cynthia, I mean, the team that worked on this was just amazing, the work they did, the detail they did, because, again, they found, this has been in the news quite a bit over the past number of months, and it came out before our report about these altered documents and the reports that they didn't file. The reason that came out is because we submitted, as soon as we found this information, we were working hand in hand with the State Department of Health. So we were providing it to them, and then they're putting a letter together notifying the city that they're considering fining them as a result of it. But so it came out through the State Department of Health, but it was our office without our investigators who compared the documents and went to the lab and compared and found what the lab submitted to the city and then compared what the city submitted, this would have never been found. just the initial, what was in the paper initially, that one of the senior representatives misrepresented one instant, but it was our folks who actually found those over 130 documents that were not submitted and found the altered document. And if you could really see, I wish you could see the paper up front, but it's clear electronically, if you look at it close, that you can see that it had been copied and pasted and the lines don't exactly match up. So you can see how it had been altered, and they were able to trace it back of going into one person's queue and the proper report, correct report coming out, and then the altered report came out the other end. So just fantastic investigative work. I want to give credit to, again, Leo and Cynthia, just a great job, and a lot of the team helped on this.
John, I just want, because that brings up a question. If you sign falsifying a report, are there criminal sanctions?
Well, we're going to leave that to our Justice Department. Very interesting. We look at there's a number of potential criminal actions that
So this might still be
could
moving
be
on.
followed
Yeah.
up on, yes. But again, great work to the whole team. Thank you. And again, just it's another one aspect of the wide variety. We've talked before about metrics, and how do you judge an IG's, what we're doing? I mean, there are some things we do for, potential eventually arrest made or recommendations that we make, identified money recovered. But in this case, it's just the opposite. There's not money recovered, but the value of the IG, it's about citizens' health and safety. How do you put a metric on that? In fact, it cost the city money. They're being fined by the Department of Health based on our results, but it's about the safety and welfare of our citizenry. This is one of the aspects of the value of what an inspector general can bring to any government agency. So I'm really proud of this work, though again, it's tough. Again, metric-wise, it's not the normal metrics. This is a metric of we're bringing out the health and safety of our citizens. That's what we're here for. And making, back to that core, what I always like to talk about, the core mission of what we're trying to do is make our government better, make it more accountable to the citizens. So, again, thanks a lot to the team. Okay, now we're going to go into contract oversight and evaluations. And I'm going to ask Tony Montero to come up and talk. And just to brag on Tony, I mean, Tony he has sought out, not just statewide, nationally. He speaks on procurement, and we have offices calling us, other inspector general offices wanting to stand up an office like ours that does procurement, contract oversight, and then the investigations. That has this specialty, and like, how do you do this? What do you do? He's spoken at state training wide. He speaks at our Inspector General National Academy on procurement and oversight. So we're just so fortunate to have Tony here on the staff. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Tony. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Okay, so we're going to start with just some basic data. Jeff, hi. Oh, I got it? Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So to start with, this is a comparison of our monitored procurement activities, which is basically all the projects that we were overseeing during the 6-month period. We have one formal review that's underway. Ongoing investigative activities, these are referrals that come to us through intake, their complaints or correspondence that pertains to a contracting or purchasing matter, and that's what we process. We got a lot of them completed. It runs in a 6-month cycle. Like for 6 months, we'll get a lot of complaints coming in, and then we get like another 6-month reprieve, and we get them all processed and closed out. And we're starting that new cycle, so they're all coming in again. And we have 3 issued tips and trends. And of course, a lot of the activity that we do is below the water line. We assist, we're the eyes and ears that are out there. We work a lot of different projects, a lot of different aspects, testing the water, seeing areas that maybe where the risk is greater. I like this chart because it shows that the way we approach what we take on as an activity, our oversight activities, we're trying not to be biased. The worst thing is if somebody comes to you and says, oh, you're picking on me. Well, this chart is showing them, no, we're not. We pretty much have great coverage over the whole county, all the municipalities. We split fairly evenly, and it's just by design the way the risk assessment works out and how we select our projects. And we do a very decent job of distributing our oversight responsibilities as best as we can. And also I look at the commodities that we look at too, just to make sure we're not just doing construction, but we're looking at services, we're looking at equipment purchases, we're trying to get some grants in there. So we're trying to cover all the different types of procurement matters that need some oversight. Yes, sir.
I ask, what's correspondence?
Oh, that's an intake or a complaint, any communication from the public notifying us of an issue. Did I go too far? Yeah. Okay, this one I really like. This was an inspection project. The whole team did it. The three evaluators, Tiffany, Sonia, and Lisa, went out to Ocean Inlet Park. They were doing a renovation on the park, and they were just supposed to do some inspection points just to see how the construction was going, verify that the contractors were performing and the project was being administered. And boy, this had every type of problem imaginable to it. They were going in to look at like the boat lift installation, handrails, gates, safety and security, and you could see there Sonia with the contractor inspecting the guardrails. And here they are again inspecting the guardrails. They're trying to measure them because the measurement was wrong. And, she noticed that. There's the boat lifts that were installed, and they look really, really nice, but there's no power to them, so there's no way to test them. So like I said, there were a lot of problems on this project. There were no findings or recommendations, but we couldn't determine if there was full compliance with the handrails, gates, boat lifts. There was a subcontractor electrical problem, and they had some design issues with the handrails and the gates. For example, the gate wasn't on the drawing, and there was no anchor point for the gate. So these were things that they'd have to go back. And the reason why I like this, project so much is because everything went wrong. There were issues that were beyond their control. The wave action in that part of the river coast was so strong that they couldn't even go out and conduct inspections without the boat possibly turning over. So there was a lot of challenges. They found out that there's not enough water pressure for the fire plugs that are in the park. So they have to work on fixing that. But the nice thing is that you learn about internal controls the most when there is a problem. And that's what I like about this, is that the county, they had problems. And nobody broke a standard, nobody did anything wrong, just problems happen, and they were working appropriately to fix them. And that gives us a good... Yes, sir.
Right, I was just thinking, so the county had determined this, not the IG's office, didn't come in and say, they found all these things wrong, and you were the first ones that found them? The county knew about them before?
We were standing right beside them as they discovered these things. Okay. And that's one of those where we're all standing there watching this, and they kind of look over at you like, are they writing this down? Are they noticing? And probably getting a little nervous. But
I first thought that maybe only the IG found all this out, which would have been more disturbing. But they knew about these things, the facilities. Okay, thank you.
Well, and there is a little bit of effect in there because whenever we show up to do something, a lot more attention to detail is paid, and we noticed that. But I think they were worried, but it's like they were handling it, and it still hasn't been resolved. They have mega issues that have to go to the board for. They have to get additional funding. They have some design problems that were unexpected. So they're working through those.
Was this the first type of inspection, this kind of thing that you've done?
We've done several. We did one in conjunction with audit for a community center up in Tequesta, and audit wrote a report on that. But we were the on-site inspectors going in and verifying all the installations. We did an inspection in Boca on landscaping, a skate park in Wellington. We did the Lantana Library one, which turned into a major report there. So we keep going out and trying to do these inspections, and most of the time we find something that makes us write a major report on.
Just one last question. Are you doing this, you being the IG's office, on every new facility that the county and the cities are doing, or is it just random, you choose things to go into?
It's random. We look at the risk involved, and it's wide and comprehensive. What type of project is it? Who are the vendors? What's the dollar amount? Who's administering the project? Is it a municipality? Is it the county? Okay. So we're trying to spread the wealth a little.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so next we're going to do the contract procurement investigative report reviews. So no reports were issued for these, and all of these, I think, are correspondence, complaints that came over from intake that we processed. And we put a lot of work into these. It's very hard to sometimes verify that nothing happened. You know, it's easy when you find something, but it's a little bit harder to say, oh, absolutely nothing happened, and we're sure of it. So on this one, this first one, guardrails, and guardrails have been our life for the past year. On this one, an anonymous complaint came in about on a roadworks contract for Palm Beach County, I think it was Seminole Pratt Whitney, and that some of the stockpiled guardrails from our project were used on a Florida DOT project for the Turnpike up in Martin County. And the FDOT IG also got involved, so I was working in conjunction with them to go over this. And it was a monster undertaking. And the basis of it was FDOT requires all their materials to be approved in advance before they're installed. And some of the heat stamp codes that are on the metal parts didn't match their approval. And they said, well, they came from Palm Beach County. That's what the anonymous complainant said. And so we went out to the county's yard. Let's see. Oh, yeah. We went out to the county's yard, and we actually inspected. We got all the invoices. We checked what should have been in storage. The project had been on hold for a year because there was a utilities conflict. So until the utilities got squared away, they couldn't complete the road. So it's just sitting there half done. And the contractor, the prime vendor, put the stockpiled materials in a yard. And there were 3 construction projects in the area where they had sand and rock and all sorts of things dumped on the site. So I went in there and climbed up all those piles, used my cane, much to the horror of all the people observing in the yard. They were confident I was going to break my neck. But I had to get those photos of those heat stamp codes so I could send them to FDOT. And as it turns out, you know, none of the findings were supported. I found all the materials that we had paid for, they were accounted for there. The heat codes are not specific. It's not like a serial number. It's just a manufacturing lot. And then they discovered that the problem also is with their internal controls on the FDOT side, because when it's new, the materials have to be approved. But with all the construction they do, once or twice a week, these guardrails are getting hit. And so the vendor has to change them out, and there's no requirement that those materials be approved. So the vendor was substituting out these damaged parts, and that's how they got on their job site. So the origin of their parts is still unknown, but Palm Beach County cleared it. So, and guardrails part 2. So we had another report come in from another anonymous complainant, and they had all these pictures of guardrail problems all over the county. And on average, 2 to 3 times a week, a guardrail gets hit, that engineering has to go out there and assess the damage and get a vendor to fix it. And they were claiming that the vendor wasn't completing the work, wasn't doing it to code, and they were overcharging the county. Well, we dug into it and reviewed all the invoices, all the photos, and went to engineering and looked through all their records. And they were misinformed, whoever made the complaint. The vendor doesn't tell us what's needed on the job site. The county tells the vendor, this is what you install. I went out, the guardrail had been hit, I want these pieces replaced. They put in an order. Vendor goes out there and replaces what we told him to. And the price, they were using the wrong parts price list. The county has a issue that if there's unbalanced bids, they don't award those line items. So the line item that the person was using in the complaint wasn't even one that was awarded on the contract. So, and the last part of this was we learned everything there is to know about FDOT specifications, and they were mistaken about what they thought needed to be changed when a guardrail got hit. So that was another fun one. Next one, we got 3 complaints on the North Palm Beach Country Club. And North Palm Beach, we had the piggyback report about 2 years ago. This is sort of like a follow-on to that. So we had 2 people complain about a fence that was going around the pool tennis area, and then another complaint about a sole source on the golf course about it being repaired. And we looked into it, and North Palm Beach read our report and took everything to heart, and they put in the proper controls, and they did piggyback the bid for the fences. They did do that correctly. However, they didn't go through with it because the vendor, the low price, he forgot to put his bonding costs in there. And when he did that, it would exceed the state threshold for public construction projects. So they decided, let's not mess with this, let's just go out and bid it as regular. And that's what they did. So that was good. And then on the golf course, it's a Nicholas signature golf course. And to maintain their signature status, it has to be maintained a certain way. And I guess the water table is rising and they're having issues, and so it's destroying the banks on the pond there. And so it was basically the water hazard. It was sliding into the lake itself. And not to make it easy on the city, a couple of teenagers went out there and were doing something with a golf cart and ripped up all the grass, so that made it even worse. But they were doing that appropriately too, the sole source justification. Okay, and the last, well, near last. Okay, so these are follow-up to previous procurement activities. So this is a follow-up to a 2022 review we did on the PACE program. That's the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. You get your home fixed, hurricane shutters or solar panels, and it gets added to your tax bill. And that was a very, very controversial program. And we looked at the ordinance and looked at how it was being implemented and ran. We had no findings on that, but we did recommend to them that they implement policies and procedures to strengthen the internal controls and so that they could document compliance with the requirements. They gave them an ordinance. The board had issued the ordinance, but yet how it had been implemented, it really needed more controls in place. And the contractors were giving them a rough time on making some of these changes on the reports. So that was in 2022. The public entities are moving to amend their ordinances and increase the consumer protections. We turn the corner into 2023, and that was the year of lawsuits. All these lawsuits get filed by the PACE providers, by tax collectors, each arguing who has the authority to do what. One PACE provider in particular insisted that he did not need approval of a city or the county to go in and offer the PACE loans, that he already had the authority when the legislature made them a special district, and that the tax collector had to do what they were told and add this to the tax rolls, and that didn't sit well with the tax collectors. So those went to court, and 2 of the cases are still pending before the Florida Supreme Court. A couple of rulings were made. There's an appeal on one of them, but all minor. But this summer, the legislature did something surprising, and they amended the law, and they added in the consumer protection. They came out clearly and said a PACE provider has to have a valid agreement with the county or municipality that they're operating in. And they added a requirement for annual reporting from the Auditor General. Every 3 years, they get an audit. And the reason why I'm so happy about this is that the new law is generally implementing what we recommended in our report. Our PACE, the Palm Beach County PACE people are working on amending the ordinance, and then they're going to come up with policies, PPM, procedures, and that'll create, the whole new PACE program. But the interesting note is in the legislation that passed, in the footnote, they cite the Palm Beach County ordinance, and a lot of the language that they used in the summary was things I think that came from our report and came from the county ordinance. So it's obvious the same people helped the state write it that were helping Palm Beach County, and I thought that was a nice pat on the back for us because they did what we said. You need the internal controls in there. And lastly, tips and trends. We did 3 tips and trends this year. The one on the prohibition of doing business with foreign countries of concern. Tangible personal property, that was a really unique one. It's one line in a massive bill, but it just basically changes one word in the Florida statutes that now makes the property requirements it includes municipalities now and special districts and agencies. In the past, they didn't have to do that, so they didn't have to maintain a property or inventory. They didn't have to have a property disposal policy. There were a lot of things that were missing. It stopped at the county level. Now, they have to comply with those statutes as well, and they do have to answer to the CFO with an audit and accountability for their property. And the last one is we saw a lot of this going on, so we just wanted to give out some guidance to all our municipalities. So we issued a tips and trends on best practices for emergency procurements, piggybacking, and sole sources. Okay, and that is that. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, Tony, again, he is just a real asset and an expert in this field, so we're really glad to have him. But I do want to point out one thing. I mean, I have experts and folks who really do this hard work and detail work. I also provide my input to the reports, and I want to say I provided input, the graphics on his report here, and I'm really proud of the piggyback there. You like that piggyback one? I looked hard, what graphic could I use? So that was, I'll take credit for that. So I'm going to have Hilary Bojan come up now and talk about some of the highlights of the audits that we've done over the past year. For 6 months.
Good afternoon. My name's Hilary Bojan. I'm the Director of Audit. So this first slide goes over our activities of the last 6 months compared to the 6 months prior. This 6-month period, we issued 2 audit reports with a total of 20 recommendations and question costs totaling over $1 million. The first audit report that we issued during the period was for the town of Loxahatchee Grove's expenditure of gas tax revenue, and it was conducted by Nicole Spence. This audit was initiated based on 2 complaints. The first alleged that the town misused the 5-cent local option fuel tax funds in violation of Florida statute. And the second alleged that the town purchased rocks for the roads out in Loxahatchee prior to council approval in violation of its procurement code. Regarding the first allegation, we found that the town did not misuse the 5-cent fuel tax funds. And for the second allegation, we found that the town did make purchases without prior council approval. In addition to the allegations, the audit focused on controls over the use of gas tax funds, as well as whether the town complied with relevant requirements. With respect to these objectives, we found that the town was not always signing checks in accordance with their ordinance, and it was also not issuing purchasing orders in compliance with its purchasing policy. We also noted that the town lacked sufficient separate accountability for the use of gas tax funds and had control weaknesses over user access and the vendor master file. The town accepted our recommendations to improve controls over its expenditure of gas tax funds, as well as its compliance with town and statutory requirements. And the second audit that we issued during the last 6-month period was for Royal Palm Beach. It was an accounts payable, expenditures, and cash disbursements audit that was performed by Sean Robinson. This was a routine audit to determine whether expenditures and cash disbursements had adequate controls, were in compliance with requirements, and were properly documented and approved. We identified some instances where village personnel split a purchase into 2 or more transactions and to avoid additional purchasing requirements. And those additional purchasing requirements might be an additional approval level or the requirement of using a requisition or a purchase order. The village's purchasing guidelines specifically prohibited splitting purchases. We also noted that the distribution of gift cards were not always documented when the gift cards were mailed to recipients, and that leftover gift cards were not sufficiently accounted for to reduce the risk of theft and ensure that they were properly used. Additionally, we found the vendor master file contained numerous inactive, duplicate, and incomplete vendor records, which increases the risk for erroneous and unauthorized payments. The village accepted our recommendations to improve compliance with its purchasing requirements and strengthen controls over gift cards and the vendor master file. So the next few slides go over our fiscal year 2025 audit plan. We used a global area approach to develop the plan. Global areas are operational, financial, regulatory, and IT topics that affect all the entities within the OIG's jurisdiction. This approach allows us to have more flexibility and coverage in our audit plan while also addressing the high risks. So this slide covers some of the carryover audits that we have. There were 7 carryovers. 2 of the audits were substantially completed as of the end of fiscal year 24, but had not had a report issued yet. The final report for the town of Palm Beach HVAC and refrigeration contract was issued in early October, and we're in the process of issuing the draft report for the city of Pahokee. And this slide goes over our planned audit activities that came from our risk assessment. In 2025, we plan to initiate audits or reviews in these areas: contracts and agreements, water and sewer utility billing and cash receipts, permitting, purchasing cards, law enforcement overtime, grants, construction contracts, and IT network security.
A question, you mentioned law enforcement. Does the IG have oversight, or is it FDLE that would do law enforcement?
Since it's an administrative side, we're just looking at the payroll and the recording of the overtime and whether it's in compliance with their requirements, as well as in accordance with the payroll or the timekeeping records. That's more what we'll be looking at, so an administrative side. So it would definitely fall under the OIG's jurisdiction.
And it would be just municipal police force?
Yes.
Thing, not the
PBSO is not
Oh,
under
right.
the,
That's the
yeah.
thought. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that concludes the audit division update. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Again, she does another fine. I tell you, I just can't say enough about Hillary and the audit team of all that they do. And you know, the question cost up there, you know, a lot of dollars of question cost. And I get, again, I'm not asked as much anymore because I think the city officials and the government officials are understanding that better now. It's like, why do you put up this question cost? That is basically the dollar amount that we need to be managing better and having controls over better, that this is public dollars and cents. This is big dollars. And so when we put that up there, it's not identified, it's not saying you're being fraudulent, but what we're saying is those taxpayer dollars, we need to do a better job in accounting for those dollars, one, or spend according to the rules and regulations. Like, you may need that project or that service, but you have a policy or there's a law in place on procedures, how we go about it. And by skirting the policies, the laws, the policies in place, we're breaking down internal controls, and it creates an atmosphere or an environment where fraud can happen, or where we can misspend our dollars. So those controls are in place, and so that's what, when you see those question costs, that's, we need to be doing a better job at managing our taxpayer dollars according to the statutes, the laws, the procedures in place. So that's the importance of that. And before we move into training and outreach, I want to just give also a kudos and congratulations to Barbara here, Barbara Bellafiore. She does so much in our office, and I've told you before, everything from admin, logistics, to HR, to everything. She led up our, for example, just our United Way campaign recently, of which we exceeded our goal, and she led all the efforts on our bake sale, and her and the number of folks who contributed to our bake sale, which people come from headquarters and drive in from miles away just to taste some of our homemade baked goods. But Barbara, thank you for all you do for the office, and that's one thing of just recent. We've exceeded our United Way goals. So I'm going to turn it over to Calinthia Diller now to talk about training and outreach. And again, you know Calinthia is our Deputy IG and General Counsel. So Calinthia, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, and I'll wrap it up by talking about a few operational matters. And training has always been a big part of what we do internally. We have monthly training within our office because it's important that our staff is knowledgeable and is able to provide the services that we're supposed to provide as an IG. But we also do training externally and outward facing. So as part of us writing and developing our strategic plan, we made a commitment to emphasize goals and strategies related to strengthening relationships in the community and building the public's knowledge and trust in what we do. So why is that important? One, when they trust us, they're more willing to accept our recommendations, and they're willing to come to us. We've talked a lot about the Riviera Beach report, which got a lot of attention, but something else that's significant about that is that the mayor actually came to us and talked to us about a lot of problems, and people are willing to do that when they have faith that you won't be biased when you're doing your investigation, and that you're independent. So that's something very important that we stress when we go out and we spread that word through our training and through our outreach. And the other goal is to really communicate to the public, what we do and to prevent problems on the front end. So we have municipalities and people in the county looking at our reports. They're searchable on our website. They call us to see, have you looked at this particular issue? So not only are we looking at finding the bad things that are happening, but also preventing them as well. So looking at the training that we've done over the last 6 months, Tony, we talked about a lot. John spoke about him a lot. He does a lot of training. He's well respected in the IG community, in the local community. He did a presentation with the IG Institute, 381 people that were available via Zoom, talking about procurement oversight. He also did 65 persons for the IG Institute course for oversight and evaluations. We talked about our education, 3 tips and trends. Audit did a tips and trends. Contra Oversight regularly does those as well. And John himself, he does a lot of PSAs through Channel 20 for the county. Some example of our outreach activities during the last 12 months include, again, Tony. He instructed to 60 IG inspectors and auditors at the IG Institute in New York City. that took place, and almost 400 IG professionals from across the country via WebEx that was held. Stu presents regularly as well. He presented to 32 people at a meeting of the Palm Beach chapter of the Government Finance Officers Association. I spoke to the paralegal, Palm Beach County chapter of the Paralegal Association. That went well. They've invited me to come back again in 2025. And just today, this is a long day, I presented on professionalism on a statewide webinar for attorneys. And I was a member of that panel. There were 4 of us. We also had a retired Supreme Court Justice and a current Supreme Court Justice. So it definitely was an honor for me to participate in that. We'll move on to budget and staffing. As you know, I'm
sorry, but can I just, does your training extend to the level of when a municipality would have you come in and have them advise on how to put an RFP together for a major project? Have you ever had, I know training is one thing, is this sort of like a consulting? Does the IG extend that far into
So obviously, we can't get involved in management type, decisions and giving anybody any guarantees that if you do this, with clear IG scrutiny in the future. But we do training. We provide tips and trends. We've dealt with things like RFPs, the appropriate process, choosing between RFPs, ITBs, and things of that nature. So we do try to get that information out when there are changes in the law. We'll do tips and trends. We'll notify people to please be aware of these things, that are coming down the pike. So we try to have that open communication at all times. We used to, on a more regular basis, go out and speak to city managers on some of the issues, some of the trends, some best practices. As part of our strategic plan, we want to continue to do that and do that a little bit more often. But, with staffing, we have to, go ahead.
We issue on the Ethics Commission side, opinions, and somebody said, can I do such and such? Does the IG have something that said, here's what we want, you're handed an RFP or proposal? Would you look at it to see if there's any problem with it?
So we don't give advisory opinions. However, we are willing to work with people and say, let's take a look at the law and walk through what's appropriate. We're not going to tell you how to do this. You may need to meet with your counsel yourself, but please be advised that the statute exists. These things are important, and you need to take those under consideration when making your decisions.
Okay, thank you.
So with respect to the budget, in 2010, as you know, the Board of County Commissioners approved 40 positions. To date, we have not had the budget or received the budget for 40 positions. We are currently funded for 27. We have 26 currently in the office. And, as we go to these IG conferences periodically and we speak to other IG offices, we all, commiserate on the fact that there's so much to do with little staff. So we do the best we can, with the staff and the resources that we have. Because for us, overlooking or having jurisdiction over the county, the municipalities, and the 2 taxing districts, they have total annual budgets of more than $12 billion. So those are huge budgets, a lot of money to look into, a lot of contracts to look into. Employees totaling more than 22,000. And we've identified more than 1,000 audible units. And more than $1 billion in contracting activities that we oversee. But we did make a pitch to the county this year. We reminded them of our AIG peer review report, where there was a quote: "The sheer size of the operations that your office oversees, your office's jurisdiction and responsibility is unparalleled by any other local government inspector general office." So we used that quote, made a pitch, and the county did agree to give us 3 more positions. So we're excited about that. We're looking to 2025 into filling those seats to help us provide the best service to the community. So that leads me to our plans for 2025. So one, as you know, this was rescheduled. Our goal was to release our annual report. We actually did do that. John talked about that earlier in November. We plan to advertise for those 3 positions so that we can get additional employees in the office. John mentioned that I spoke at the AIG training in New Orleans. He did as well. In October, I also spoke or taught on ethics at the Florida Police Accreditation Coalition, also known as Florida PAC, which included an audience of law enforcement officers, corrections officers, and members of OIG offices. And tentative dates for 2025 for the IG committee meeting, May 1st, November 6th. And you'll be hearing about significant reports that are to come, so stay tuned. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you, Calentia. So, again, blessed to have Calentia here with us. I mean, just, I pinch myself every day, not that she shows up. She continues showing up here. This is great, and the rest of the staff, so. Hey, and as we end up our meeting here, this is great. I'm so glad that State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg came. This is his last IG committee meeting here, and so I want to recognize, so thank you for all of your support that you've given us over the years. I mean, since 2013. Yes, you're very, yes. Yeah, there it is.
You've aged him.
And I wasn't sure if you were going to make it here, but these tokens here are very special that I have here that I will hunt you down and provide one personally. I wasn't sure that you were going to be here, but these are special tokens that I personally, the government doesn't buy these. Out of my own pocket, I purchase these and will give these out on special occasions. So I will provide you with a token of appreciation, which has a high five there, for all of the, not just the work on the IG committee, which is, I'm glad you're here, and throughout the years, I mean, great advice and questions, I appreciate it, but on the other side, in working with you as the state attorney and the public corruption unit and working with your team, it's just been an honor. It's been so good to work with you and to be able to know that, we can come to you and we have great conversations and, again, and working with the public corruption team. So thank you so much, Dave, for everything that you've provided for the IG committee and my office. Thank you.
General, thank you. It means a lot, and you've done an outstanding job. You and your team are absolutely outstanding. And I remember when we were up here to choose you, to select you, and it's now been, I guess, 10 years since, 11
It has
years?
been, yeah, let me think of this. It's been almost 12 years, 12.
Almost 12 years. I've been state attorney for 12 years, so it was one of my first
Yeah.
decisions. It was a great decision. I can't claim credit for it because it was a group decision, but you were outstanding in your presentation, and I don't think that we've made a better pick than to pick you. Is really, you've just done an amazing job saving the taxpayer money, holding people accountable who need to be held accountable, and the only Carrie that I think is better than you is Leah Carey, because
Yes,
she really is.
I will agree.
Yes, you outkicked your coverage with that one. Leah
Yes.
is a star. But John, you've really been an outstanding public servant. I've really enjoyed being on this committee, and thank you for the tokens. I know that it means a lot because with your military background, these are important things, and you paid for it out of pocket. I just hope it wasn't from overtime reimbursements during your lunch hour.
That's right.
Can you believe during his lunch hour he's trying to get
Yeah.
overtime? That's just
Yeah.
that's my lasting memory of this. This is why this committee exists. This is why you exist.
Well, a lot of the other overtime came from his driving back and forth, from thinking about
Right.
what he was going to, and talking, about.
But you see how challenging it is for us to hold people accountable, where it's obvious what was going on there. But the fact that he could have been thinking about it while he's in the parking lot before work, I mean, that shows you, reasonable doubt. It's the challenge we always face. But you have done such an incredible job. And so I want to thank members of the committee, my friends up here, and the audience, and your outstanding staff for all your great work. Although I will be leaving this job, I will not be leaving the community. I will still stay active, just in a different role. And thank you for everything.
I know that you're leaving and you haven't announced yet, but we do have some openings for than, on our staff. If you're interested, we would, certainly, I would entertain.
Send me an application. Okay. We'll see.
So, good. Well, again, thank you very much, and thank you. And again, Carrie Howard, who's not here, was just on a little bit longer than you. Not that, since 2010, she's really the plank holder, was here when the office was stood up. So it's unfortunately she was not available to be here today too. So we're losing two, of our seasoned IG committee members who, again, both have provided just great guidance, questions, and thoughts, and I really do sincerely appreciate it. So thank you again. Appreciate it. Okay. And with that said, that concludes our presentation. If there are any questions for me.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, General. I almost hate to ask, is there any new business? None? Good. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. And we're adjourned. Thank you.